Afternoon, everybody. So excited to be here today. One thing would be super helpful for me before we sort of jump into the conversation, and one thing we'd like to be really interactive and talk about the things that are most important to you. I guess kind of quick show of hands if people were, who's an entrepreneur, who's an investor. I just always like to understand. So entrepreneurs, they're investors. There's a few other. What's other? Is there anyone other, or is that a both? Maybe that's both.
Elected officials?
Elected officials, all right. I'm embarrassed to say secret government witnesses are super helpful. I have not had a ton of experience, with this organization, but was really excited when Ryan sort of told me a little bit about what you're trying to do and how you're trying to create opportunities, for fantastic entrepreneurs to be connected to the right folks that can help them grow and expand their businesses. And then I think there's aspirations for some of you that you're going to have an opportunity to take it to that next level, raise funds, institutional capital, including all the way through to IPOs. So it's exciting. One of the things that's interesting when I talk to entrepreneurs, I sometimes am nervous that people will think of me as a real entrepreneur. And I sometimes joke, the most entrepreneurial thing I've ever done is open a McKinsey office. Pretty good run. We went public in 18. So obviously the company must have been in pretty good shape. I could go public 14 months after I joined. We had some issues, but they're all internal issues. It's a great platform. Everyone used DocuSign before, I assume. Although with interesting questions I ask people sometimes is, how many of you are a customer of DocuSign? You pay DocuSign money as opposed to just signing agreements. No, good. I mean, you sure you're a customer? You sure you pay us? And the only reason I ask, some people...
It's a company...
All right, you guys launch paying. I just want to make sure you're paying.
I think we are.
I lost this debate once with Andre Iguodala from the Warriors, where he said, I'm a big customer. And I sort of said, really? Because I bet you signed a lot of yours, but I bet you're not a customer. And he pulled out his phone and showed me his account. He actually had an account. He saved all his agreements. So there are people surprised. The reason I say that, there are about 1.6 million customers at DocuSign. So quite a few around the globe. But there are over 1 billion people who have signed an agreement. Those people are our users, and we love users. We just like customers a little more because they pay us. So I always like to distinguish who I've got in the audience. Almost everyone's a user. The few proud 1.5 million customers out there, and most of them are businesses. We brought in a new CEO 2 years ago, Alan Dickinson. I was with him last night, and now I'm on the board of DocuSign. I'm on the board of a company called UiPath. It's a public software company in RPA, and I'm on a private company board called Smart News. And I spent a lot of time advising other early stage growth company, sort of more at the 50 to 100 million ARR range, is when they tend to have their VCs ask them to spend some time with me. And I can't join any more boards because I'm looking for a job. I'd like to do one more real job, run one more software company before I go to the dark side with you investor types out there trying to live off entrepreneurs. So I'll do that. I'll do that at the end. Keep me out of the bars. But that'll be a passion at the end. Try to get. So that's my deal, and I'm spending most of my time really spending time with entrepreneurs that are looking for potentially the next leader in their company. Those of you that spend a lot of time in the traditional SaaS software space, let's be clear about it. It's a challenge time, right? The last year and a half have not been great. There are a few exceptions at scaled software companies that are doing well, but because of that giant sucking sound you hear of all the CIOs spending more money and reserving more money for AI projects, they're really trying to pull back on traditional horizontal SaaS businesses. So I'm struggling to find just that right opportunity where I can take that company all the way to the next level. All right, a lot about me. Let me open it up and see what kind of questions are on your mind that I think would be helpful to you all as you're thinking about what's happening in the market for your specific businesses. And I'll just lastly say, really, you should feel I'm a person. You can ask pretty much anything you want. There's some chance it'll be confidential information or something on a company I'm on the board of, but otherwise, have at it and don't worry about being polite.
So as we enter the 7th or 8th inning of SaaS, why look for a SaaS gig? It's over.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Why do you want to do something that may be hitting the end? So I believe people should work on something that they know something about. And so, as I told you, if I could take that undergraduate degree and explained to everyone I was an AI leader, I'd be right there at Anthropic and on the bandwagon. But I think my skill set lends itself much more to a traditional SaaS business. I would say I'm spending a lot more time talking to vertical SaaS plays. And if I was thinking about investing, so if I was thinking about building a new company, I'd be much more excited about an organization that either was a pure vertical SaaS play, pick it like a Procore for construction, if you will, Service Titan, doing stuff for contractors and things. Those are great businesses, and I think they will withstand sort of agent-based businesses that are coming out of the AI technologies, agentic solutions, much more than the horizontal plays. I think it's going to be a lot harder to find horizontal plays that have enough software differentiation. But I would just leave you with a sense about, look, we know how these new technology waves come, right? And they get a lot of promise, and we usually we sort of, in the short run, I think we overstate how impactful they're going to be. We may understate in the long run how transformative. Think about the internet. Think about mobility, how that's changed things. Think about SaaS and the move from traditional on-prem software to SaaS. Those have been massive changes. But I actually had lunch. I don't know if anyone knows Pat Walravens. He's an analyst in the space, JMP. And we happened to have lunch today. And he said, I'm going to write a paper. We're having this exact conversation. He goes, think of all the companies that were the on-prem companies. Like, think about if you were in the supply chain. You think about, Bond, Magistic, what happened to them all? Or think about the analytics space. And, many of them some of them got rolled up into a PE play. Yeah. And many of them are still around, but not close to the importance or valuations that they had at that time. I think we're going to see the same thing with traditional horizontal SaaS, unfortunately. I think we're going to see a lot of them go away, but you're going to see platforms like, Oracle didn't go anywhere. SAP didn't go anywhere. I don't think Salesforce is going to go anywhere. I don't think ServiceNow, I'm on the edge, I'm a huge Bill McDermott fan. I don't think they're going to go anywhere. I don't think Workday is going to go anywhere. And I think those companies, Carl at Workday, will figure out how to bring AI technologies just before upstarts, maybe not the buyout, but just before upstarts really start to take a share. And the reason is that core system of record that they have, that will allow them to win. So to really answer your question another way, I'm looking for one of those companies that I think has that differentiation ability to say, we're going to be able to take that onslaught of AI investment and AI progress.
Hi.
Yeah.
Fine. Usually large companies are risk-averse. How do you encourage innovation in a company like Adobe?
So it'd be easier to answer the question if I was more proud of the innovation we had in the last 3 or 4 years. So let me tell you the story, and then I can try to give you some. The generic answer is, encourage failure, reward people who take chances. I think you've all sort of heard those. I'd almost call them, tropes at this point, right, about what you need to do. And the part of your question that's interesting, though, is how do large companies do that? Because in larger companies, people tend to think about themselves on a career track of some sort. And it's difficult to be rewarded for failure. It just is, right? It's against so many things that we do. So I think we sometimes do an okay job of not penalizing people for failure in a significant way. But I don't see a big companies figuring out a way to reward them. So in terms of the DocuSign story, signature is what you all know DocuSign for. Say his signature and it says DocuSign. By the way, many people use other people's signature products and think they're using DocuSign because that's how successful we were building that brand. But we realized over time, you're going to commoditize. Even the best software application will commoditize if you don't build out a broad platform. And so our goal initially was called DocuSign Agreement Cloud. And we bought a small company in the space called CLM, or Contract Lifecycle Management. And that was sort of our initial strategy to say, how are we going to build on top of our signature leadership, broaden it, so that when lower cost competitors came along and tried to undercut us, we'd be able to have that innovation and start strong. But when the pandemic hit, our customer demand was so great to just fulfill the needs that they had on signature that we're customer-centric companies, so I like the way that we focus on customers, but we lost our discipline and we lost that sort of focus on driving the new innovation. And we allowed our engineering and product resources to be very much focused on, the queen, who brought us to the dance in signature. We've now relaunched that about 6 months ago in a new version called IAM. It's not asset management. You could argue it was a bad choice, but most people who buy Signature aren't in the asset management space. So, and it's intelligent agreement. And so the question is, would we be successful in doing that? And I'd say we have not shown yet that we have, but I have confidence we will. And I think what we did in that case, we really need to separate the teams. And so when we let resources be generally pooled between the core Signature business, which is almost a $3 billion business, our sort of CLM, that business is about $150 million business, and then the new agreement, is about $0 business right now. So you can imagine if you're thinking about your career, someone says you want to work on the 3 billion, the 150 million, or the 0. There are some people that say I want to go do that new thing, but it's tough, and it's tough to get a team. Resources are less, etc. So we really needed to split the product resources and dedicate people, so we weren't having that sharing of resources that pulled everyone back to Signature when we had that crisis. So I wish I had a better answer for you, having done that successfully. But that really is the challenge as you go. It's not, in my mind, for a big company. It's from single product to multi-product. That's where it's trickiest to try to drive innovation.
So at DocuSign, how did you know when you had product market fit? I'm just kind of curious to see.
Just before I arrived, they got product market fit, so it made it pretty easy. So I think it's a really important question. And by the way, as I've spent my time talking to companies, it's the number one thing I'm trying to figure out. Is that product market fit, and is it a successful leadership position, or have you just sort of maybe satisfied in a Me Too way? I think for DocuSign, when I joined DocuSign, it was about $300 million in revenue, so it wasn't a small company, but 10x that now. I think the reality was we had found some fit in some verticals. So what I realized was, if you look at the real estate vertical, and has anyone here buy a house before you could use DocuSign, and then since bought a house after you had DocuSign? So, just for the rest of you, the experience of buying a house before, we had these things called signing ceremonies, and what happens, so if I'm trying to buy your house, what happens is through other people we negotiated, and under my breath I called you a cheap bastard, and you called me an asshole, and we had all that experience before we met. And then they said, I got a great idea. Why don't we sit down together and pretend to read documents as we sign them? Because the reality is you get these disclosures, and there's usually a couple hundred pages, and everyone does, the realtors all make fun of this, just so you know. They all go, people go like, yeah, sure, yeah, wells buried in the back, yep, okay, that's true. Earth, yeah, I understand. No one, they're just signing the documents. And so we replace that with sitting at your home. Read, if you want to read one, you read one, but what most people do is just click, and they trust their realtor. Much better experience. So the real estate vertical took off for us. Once they saw that potential, basically everyone in the United States, also in Australia and the UK, it took off. And what happens is, guess what most executives at large companies do from time to time? Buy houses. And so that was our in, where people could say, this was a much better experience I had buying a house than I used to, and I want to bring that kind of ease into my company. And so the product market fit started in real estate, and that was probably 2015 or 16, so before I was there, it hit, and we were just starting to get into broader banking, and I could just see it. I could see it was there. So the answer was, you had overwhelmingly positive experience in customers that said, you have changed my life. And we actually, it's a funny little transition, but DocuSign has 3 core values. Your values, guys get a mug and you put the name of things on it, pass it out to everyone. I kind of hate those exercises, but you'll be very surprised by the 3 at DocuSign. And I was CEO of these, so I have to take responsibility or credit, depending on how you look at it. The first one is trust. You all understand I'm the trust brand. Responsibility, so we'd be responsible to our employees, responsible to our customers. And the other one is called Docu-Love. If you had said to me before joining DocuSign, I would be the CEO of a company that one of its core values had the word love in it, I would have laughed. But if you work at DocuSign and you go out in the world, you go to a cocktail party, get into an Uber or a Lyft, and you say to someone that you've never met before, and they say, what do? You say, I work at DocuSign. 9 out of 10 people say the same thing. I love DocuSign. And then they tell you the story. We call these stories Docu-Love stories. And usually the stories have very little to do about DocuSign and a lot to do about them. My favorite one that I always quote is the person who said, just the other day, I was buying my third home and I was able to do it while I was on vacation with my family in the Serengeti on safari. And let me tell you, it was so amazing. There we were in the middle of no open sky and I was buying a home. And without DocuSign, I wouldn't have been able to get my third luxury home. Is this really about DocuSign, or do you just want me to know that I take vacation to Serengeti and you have 3 of it? But they all are excited about it, or the job they got, whatever the story is. And we realized that was important not only to our customers, but it was also important to our employees. And one of the reasons people love working at DocuSign is because they tell people to work at DocuSign, they get, you say, you're talking about Oracle. I work at Oracle? I'm not saying people hate you, but very few people say, Oracle? I love Oracle. We just negotiate with you guys. You're so reasonable and understand. Focused on our successes. No one says that. So we actually one of our values. So that, but the product market fit came when customers were so enthusiastic. And I realized that's when we had it, but now we just need to bring it together.
What other questions do we got from the audience?
They don't have to be about DocuSign, obviously. Anything on the table.
If you go there, could you talk about how you see boards of directors evolving, the role of the board evolving, particularly given all the exponential innovation? Are they truly prepared at scale to understand, acknowledge, and act, given that some of this disruption could truly destroy their the economic value that they have additional responsibility to oversee, and what might we need to do over the next 3-6 months, probably even within a year, right, to ensure that these boards act in the fiduciary interest and not end up being a case study in Harvard Business School for other reasons.
Yeah. And are you specifically about public company boards, private, the whole thing, technology? There's some generic answers and then some more specific. What's your interest area to have?
I'd love to get your perspective on public company boards, but I can also appreciate the caveats that come with responding to a question of that nature.
Yeah.
But given that, probably wherever you feel comfortable. But I guess the underlying interest is to seek to understand the role of the board, and are they ready, or not?
Yeah.
And the consequence, I guess, to a lot of people in this room might be, okay, what does that mean in terms of capital deployed? Because there's a lot of capital locked in companies that are iconic in nature and have stature, but potentially could be disrupted, significantly.
Yeah. So it's going to lead into a personally painful story to give you the full answer, but what the heck. So let me start off with public and really focus on public company boards. One of the things, particularly if you think about the technology space, which is where we are biased, obviously in this audience. So up until 2 years ago, it was a pretty easy job being a public company director. I mean, if I could use the DocuSign example, we had 3 years of we're growing 35% a year, adding about 200, maybe 250 basis points of profitability, and happiest employee base I've ever seen. I mean, it was great. Each come in, they show up every quarter, pop the champagne, pat themselves on the back for the obvious incredible work they had done to make the company so successful, and then come back next quarter. And then the pandemic hit, it got even better. When other companies were suffering, we went from 35% grower to a 50% grower, and then next year a 60% grower. This is at scale. This is at $2 billion of revenue. So now they were popping the champagne and calling all their friends to say how great they were. And then 18 months later, it was a very different story. And we didn't, as a board, I was on the board, manage it very well, quite frankly. And I think same story, you say the same thing as Zoom or Peloton or Twilio, a lot of the companies that had that dramatic play. And so I don't have an attitude that board was terrible or all these boards are terrible, but I think we underestimated the responsibilities that the board had. And I think there's a couple things we're getting wrong. I'll start at the negative, and there's some positive too. One thing that we got wrong, and I should have mentioned, my business partner, both Responsive for 10 years and then 6 years at DocuSign, a guy named Scott Orange, CMO and then COO. He wants to write a book. He wants my support on it. Is this, what's wrong with boards and why they're not working? And so this is a topic we spent some time talking about. The first thing that happens, I think a lot of board members think they understand the business better than they do. And they spend their time getting these briefings from smart executives, and they come in polished presentations, and they're explaining, but historically, why everything happened. It's pretty easy to talk about the past and look like a very good forecaster. It's a little harder to tell what's going forward. And so because everyone was crushing it in all the numbers, boards felt they really understood what was happening. So the first weakness is thinking you know more than you know. The second thing is boards, I believe, at public companies should really focus on two things. Having to make the tough call when you want to change out the chief executive. Opining and weighing in on other things to give counsel to that chief executive who's there. And then approving, important things like compensation, strategy plan, things like that. Not setting, but approving, because you need a check and balance for your investors. That's a fiduciary responsibility. And I think when things start going great and people have a little bit of knowledge and think they're really smart, they start thinking, well, I should be setting strategy. And I think we have a lot of boards where the people have experience that makes them good to be like on the audit committee and doing a great job with the fiduciary responsibility and ensuring that our security risks are monitored, obviously our audit risks, we're not cooking the books, that there's no financial shenanigans, things like that in the company, and the compensation that goes to the executive team is not too high, right? By the way, that's one example of boards doing a really good job getting the message from shareholders right now. The stock-based compensation is real. Stock-based compensation is not a fake number. It's a real number. It's not a cash number, but it really is diluted to investors. But they got out of that focus and started to say, I understand the products. I understand the customers. Use this as an example, DocuSign. I ran a cable company 10 years ago. I know about technology, so I'm going to understand how people buy software today. And it's like, it's not the same. It's just not the same. But that hubris that comes after all those years of success, we're now seeing a lot of boards struggle. So if I were you as an investor, and I was thinking about public company board, I would be excited about two things. I think you should not have the CEO and the board chair be the same person. Now, full disclosure, at Responses, I was the CEO and the board chair, but I joined when it was a $20 million revenue company. It didn't matter when I joined, and it is kind of hard to make that change later because it looks like something went wrong, so I stayed. When I got to DocuSign, I knew we were a company that was going to go public at some point. I said, I don't want to be the chair. I don't think it's good governance. I think you should have a separate person for that. So be very aware. I'd be super careful about companies that have the dual stock. So you have a CEO who's got controlling interest in the company. And I don't know if you guys follow what just happened with 23andMe. Mm-hmm. But, basically you've got a board of 7 people. And then you got a CEO. And the CEO says, well, you can fire me if you want. But then I can just call a shareholder meeting and fire all of you. So you can't really fire me. And you can't really disapprove of my, offer to acquire the company in any meaningful way because I can fire him. Yeah, so it's so, and I don't have any issues with her, which it's a weird situation, how that's played out.
It's not that weird.
You don't think it's that weird? Mm. I think it's fairly unusual for the whole board to resign at the same time.
But that's because she IPO'd it, had a share, and now she offered everybody 40 cents a pop.
Yeah, it was trading at 36. It's a nice premium, 10%.
After she took everybody's money.
Yeah. No, and so your point, that fact pattern that led you to the 36 cent per share stock price, it's going to get ugly, right? It's going to be ugly no matter what happens.
There's lawsuits coming, yeah. Sure.
And just like the Dell situation was not egregious, there were lawsuits that were coming. But my point is that setup, in a situation where someone has that control, it's not, as an investor, I'm not saying it's always going to turn out like it did at 23andMe, but you are creating the opportunity where it could happen. You contrast that with Twilio, at least where they had the phenomenon, they had an expiring capability. And after Jeff Lawson was their founder and CEO, after his extra voting powers went away, the board decided to make a change and bring in a new CEO. They would not have been able to do that because Jeff didn't want to have that change. And Jeff, by the way, I think was great. He built a tremendous amount of value. but there's sometimes it's time. It's time, for changes to occur. So I'd be very careful about boards that don't actually have the control, right? I'm on the board of UiPath, and we're in that situation. So Daniel Dinas is the founder, has controlling interest. Technically, if we all got together and said, Daniel, we don't believe you're doing the right thing, he could say you're all fired. I don't think they have to do that, and I don't think they can get to that situation. But now that I've seen what's happened in the down cycle, I'm less excited about that model. And then the last thing I would tell you is you think about from a fiduciary standpoint, look at the experience of the board. Not everyone has to be an expert in the business, but if you look across the experience set, and then you think across the business challenges and opportunities that a company has, it'd be nice to think that there's at least one board member that understands well each of the major opportunities and issues for the company. And if you don't have that, I think you have a real risk where the board, not even if they're showing up and trying, they might just not be able to provide the leadership they need to. So that's how I think. And private companies, I don't want to go too long on this, but I think about it very differently. Private companies generally, the board members are the owners. Right? So they have a pretty good incentive system in terms of shareholder, alignment. And just quickly, I'll tell you this last story. When I was at Responses, we had the company had gone through hell. When I joined, it was a turnaround. And the same investors stayed with the company on the board. We went public. And when we went public, everyone said to me, "You're going to get rid of all those VCs and go get some seasoned, experienced executives now, right?" And I didn't. I added one person to chair the audit committee because I didn't really have a person that I thought could do that one skill. And otherwise, I said, I got a group of 5 people that are passionate about this company. They stayed with this company for years. They don't have the same financials. They did, of course, they did disperse some of their funds, some of their ownership share, but they were still all owners. And they knew the business really well, and it was sort of an expert at each of the major problems. So 2 years later, we sold the company, but if we hadn't, I wasn't making any plans to change that board. So, but what was powerful about that board is it had been built. I wish I could say they all were there when I did it, other than the person who brought in Mike to do the audit committee. They were a really well-designed board. And it was luck, I think, a little bit, but it just was the right group. So take a look at their backgrounds, think about the business, and go, is that a group of people that I would be comfortable that they could make the right decisions about that business? Okay.
Yes. Yes. There's been rumors and speculation for years that blockchain should have or would be disrupting the trust and authentication industry. But we haven't really seen it happen. Has DocuSign ever explored that, or why, is your opinion, did it not go mainstream?
Yeah. So great question on blockchain. It's sort of funny because I'm having like a little nervous reaction, like PTSD. On our IPO roadshow in 2018, so 6 years ago, this was a cakewalk. It's like one of the easy. I mean, most IPO roadshows are not that hard. So you're at that point, usually not always. Your company's in a position where the demand for your shares dramatically, outstrip what you want to sell, and so they're not that difficult. In many cases, like the DocuSign one, because the financial industry all used DocuSign, they all understood the product, so they all wanted to buy. And most of our time on that roadshow is actually people negotiating with me to try to get a bigger stake. You get Morgan Stanley to give us more shares. So it was not a challenging roadshow. But there was one question that was asked in almost 7 days, 10, 11 meetings. It's called 70 meetings. 68 of them, not approximately 68 to 70, which isn't blockchain going to put you out of business? Asked in some format. And of course, when there's a new technology, you can't be a Luddite. You can't say, no, blockchain's nothing, and it makes everyone nervous, like you're not really looking at it. So in advance, we had done a partnership with a blockchain company to have the capability for customers that wanted to store their agreements in the blockchain versus storing them in the traditional DocuSign infrastructure. And Intel did that. Only Intel ever has availed themselves of the blockchain solution at DocuSign. And the answer is someone at Intel, not casting any dispersion, not Pat, Pat wasn't there then, wanted to do a blockchain project. It had nothing to do with it. They just wanted to say we're doing a blockchain project, and so they happened to do it with us. There's a core problem with blockchain, and you brought it up around identity. that I think, I'll talk to you specifically about DocuSign, but it applies to a lot of businesses. If you think about yourself entering a contract with somebody, how often would you be excited about entering a contract with someone where one of the features of your contract was you wouldn't necessarily know who the other person was?
Marriage.
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah. There are too many times you sign a contract with someone and you don't want to know who the other person is. You don't want to figure it out. And so one of the big attractive things of blockchain, of course, is the ability to say, well, you don't have to say who the other person is. So that's not helpful in our situation. And the other issue is it only does one piece effectively at this point in time. If you don't want to try to understand the identity of the other person and you want to try to keep it sort of secret potentially, is it a low-cost way to store that forever? And the cost, we used Ethereum for our partnership. And to be fair, we use some numbers here. I want to be fair because it's going to look more dramatic than it is, but still dramatic. We didn't have scale, right? So it wasn't like we were doing lots and lots of these agreements in the Ethereum blockchain. But we had to pay about $1, or Intel and no other customers paid about $1 to store each of those agreements. The cost of DocuSign, not only to store that agreement forever for you, but the whole process of identity, figuring out who you are, looking at co-location, the facility that you originated that from, all of the things we do cost about 7 cents. So that's more than 2 orders of magnitude less cost effective in the commercial blockchain at that time. It's probably come down meaningfully from $1, but it's not 7 cents. And so we actually have a solution contract. So not surprising to me, there's not been a successful blockchain signature-oriented business. And I don't expect there will be, at least not professional lifetime. Now, that's just one component. I'm not expert at all the other possible things. I'm not down on blockchain, I'm not down on crypto. But in terms of thinking about it to the specific question you asked around agreements, I don't think it's a great technology for it. I don't think it's meant to be there. I think there may be some industry-specific solutions where people might have an existing network and they might have identity already, sort of identified, where a blockchain solution would be custom for that and it could be effective. I don't think that's a huge business, but I think there could be a business there. But in the core, 2 people making an agreement and they don't have a previous, understanding of who they are, I just don't think it's a great technology solution.
Adding to that, we've heard a lot about AI agents today or this week. How do you think these non-human identities actually change the landscape of digital signatures and trust, per se? Would you let an agent buy you a house? Would you trust it? And does it have to have some rights?
So everyone's got a point of view on AI, so I won't disappoint. I think the primary benefits in, let's say, the next 24 months, you start getting like 36, 48. I think it's going to be dramatic changes that I'm probably not being creative enough to envision. I think the primary benefit is going to be on the efficiency side. And so it's going to be situations where, like DocuSign, when we're thinking about AI, we're thinking about 2 core things. In our business, we have a lot of tasks where, quite frankly, we ask people to not be creative, to not be human. You guys know, like XDRs, MDRs, SDRs, these are people who drive lead generation to reach. We spend a lot of time taking these young, they're usually their first or second job out of school, people start those jobs. We tell them, don't think. We've already designed the best email and the best call script. Use this. And then if you think something's, non-optimal, give feedback to your manager, and he or she will pass that on to the people who write this. We don't want you thinking. So then you start going, wait a minute, we're only paying them $60,000 with a $30K, bonus. Why couldn't we have an agent do that? If we've already determined what we think are all the right answers. So I think there's a real opportunity. We've got a lot of people. We have almost 1,000 people who do that job. So there's a real opportunity, I think, for that efficiency. And then the second thing is try to leverage AI for our customers in our software to say, you have all these agreements. Can you get insights from these agreements? Can you do them more efficiently? Can you realize that some lawyers that are negotiating contracts are fast and effective, some are not? Some, you don't even need a lawyer doing that. It should be a paralegal. Some, you don't need a paralegal. It should be an agent. And then think about the analytics of what lessons can you pull out of those contracts that we have, and you've signed with us. That's where I think you're going to see the innovation. To your specific question about would it replace, the transactors out there and say, go tell an agent to buy me a house and then call me when it's done. I think it's a bad example because it's such an important purchase for people. There's so much more emotion in it. I think even more than just the financial plan. But I could imagine a business that was in that space saying, like, if you were renting a giant apartment building and it had 1,000 units, and you could say, why do I have these people going around showing them units? Why don't I just have all the pictures online, let them interact with a bot, an agent to that piece, have the negotiation with the agent. The agent says you can only lower the rent to $3,250. That's the rule. Do the best you can, optimize it, and that's the book. I could see that happening on the business side. So you'd end up negotiating with the agent, from the other side. But I don't think you're going to buy your house and just say, here's my checkbook, go get me a home. Because I just think the variables don't make this. Does that get at your question?
Quick question back here. Going back to the AI, SDR, AEML, you could increase scale, the cost of an AI SDR, if you were to set up 2,000 for the cost of what you have for a human. But having tried many of those tools, none of them have produced anything close to human quality. I'm curious if you've considered or have evaluated or had responded to the inefficiency.
Just make sure when you're thinking about the solution, can you give me like an example about a software solution that people are using?
What did you use that didn't work?
I've been an early adopter in at least 24 AI SDR products that have gone at it at different angles, and the friction it takes to try and get it to the same level of yeah.
Have you used 11X?
Sorry?
Have you used 11X, that company?
I am familiar with it. I'm not sure if I tried it.
Good. Just invested in them, so I'm hoping they're not one of the ones.
I haven't given you the market landscape.
Yeah, we should talk about that. So, Son, they just moved from London to here. And I did very little, almost, I would say I did no early stage investing, but through a long connection, Aaron Levy Box, strong arm to do this one, because I have strong feelings about that specific XDR space. So I think most of the software today has been focused on trying to make that process of the MDRs or SDRs more effective and more efficient and target, as opposed to really replace them. And so it's sort of a complicated topic because there's a thing that a lot of people don't understand that are building software, the ones you used, or like 11X, which is another reason companies like having XDRs. And the reason is it's a recruiting source for AEs. And so it's a great training ground and a proving ground and pretty inexpensive. And the AEs also like feeling like they got someone supporting them. So there's some benefits to it that don't necessarily play out in the P&L and play out in your HR strategy and things you're doing. But if you put that aside, which, I mean, that's like when people say, imagine there's no taxes and they explain something to them. Slap them, because there are taxes. And so coming to a solution that's in a made-up world if there were no taxes is not very effective. So when someone says it doesn't matter about the HR implications, slap them, because it does matter, because you still need to hire AEs. But I think the answer is, I haven't seen any software today that I think, I have the same agreement with you. The overall marketing and sales software solutions to try to support that have been not impressive. And I think the answer is it's very difficult to have a CRM system that's so accurate, the right information that you could be, agentic solution to make those calls. And that's, by the way, sometimes when you have mistakes in those groups, it's because you have people that took that message we told them is, don't think, just shut up and send out the emails we said to send out, and then they send out emails that don't make sense. And customers, we have I get a lot of complaints when I was CEO of DocuSign. I mean, a lot. We have a big company, but I got a number of complaints from customers saying your MDRs are pummeling me with emails, and I'm sending back messages saying, please stop sending me emails. I'm already a customer, and I don't want to buy anything else. I'm happy, and the systems can't handle that. They don't understand how to go, oh, we better put them on a do not call it. So I think there is a need for that. So my guess is in the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to find enablement tools, not replacement tools, for those young professionals you're talking about. We can make them better, and we can do things where we say, let me draft for you, and then you approve. So draft and approve, draft and approve. So you're not doing some of the legwork. But then you're going to get some things and you're going to scratch your head and go, that's weird, because I see this one set of data says this is a big customer, and another one says I'm sending a note to the CIO saying, hi, I'm Dan from DocuSign. If they're already a customer, the CIO, like, that's probably not the right message to send them. I should go find out who's the AE on that, you know. So I think the people will be able to correct. We're not talking about hallucinations here. We're just talking about bad logic, right? And so I think that that's where we're going to be for the near term, is that these will be softwares that will enable them to be more efficient, but not replace them. But it's exciting. The vision, like I'm excited about that vision. I think it's gonna take some work. And the biggest thing I would tell you, like a lot of things in business, we say that the model doesn't work or the technology doesn't work. It's garbage in, garbage out. You put in crappy data, you don't have your systems with the right information. It's not the intelligence of the system that's wrong. It's the inputs that we didn't do a good enough job of keeping that data clean. And that's going to be an important job in the land of AI. You know, we used to tell your kids to go learn how to be software engineers. That's not the answer anymore, because that's a lot of that work's going to be replaced. Tell them now to be a data expert, because people who manage data can help the large systems be clean. They're going to become gold.
Yeah, I was just wondering what it's like being on a board of directors for a company that IPO'd and has dropped 80% since they IPO'd.
I have two. Which one do you want to ask them?
I was looking at Eli and I.
That's a painful question. To be clear, DocuSign is significantly higher stock value than when I joined. But UiPath, unfortunately, I joined right before the IPO.
Well, I was looking at buying some now.
So I'm a fan. I'm a fan. That's probably the CEO right now, Daniel, calling me. And it's my no good son. One of my no good sons. So look, timing is sometimes not completely indicative of the reality, but the unfortunate truth is just what you said. Right? So UiPath was on a tear as a private company, and we had a very high last valuation. And there was a lot of pressure. I think we made a mistake. Daniel did not want the public valuation to go out lower than the astronomical last private valuation. Who thinks we're going to have a lot of issues with that in the next couple of years?
Oh, yeah.
This is going to be big. So we actually pushed, I think, the valuation, stretched it maybe a little bit higher than we should, because you don't want to be in a situation in your first year where you're turning negative, much less what's happened in the last couple of years. So two things happened. One, the market did dramatically correct, and all software companies' valuations came down pretty much 50 or 60. If you're a high flyer, 75 is not uncommon. DocuSign dropped from our big 75% over 2 quarters. So that was, I don't say common, but surely not uncommon. The second thing that happened at UiPath is we got something wrong where we thought we had bounced. And the company's $1.5 billion in revenue. It's growing. As you look at ARR, it's growing between 10 and 20%, depending on which metric you use. Right now, our ARR is complicated because of how we do revenue. But so the revenue growth is more dramatic than ARR. I think ARR is more important. But so it's not like Zoom growing at 2%. I mean, it's not the 40% before. So the answer is that 80%-ish drop, I think 50, 60 points is the market changed. And 30 points is we didn't execute as well as we could have. Okay. We created a second drop. But then you might hear the answer, only 30. Well, 30%, like, for execution, there's a word for that. It sucks, right? You don't want to have that. So, and I think there's a lot of things that happen in the software space, and there's a macro trick. I mean, there's plenty of excuses, but you can't, in my mind, get away from that piece. And we had a CEO transition issue where we tried to bring in a new CEO and co-CEO, Rob Enslin, fantastic executive, had some personal challenges and left, so the founders come back as CEO. And it's we got to fix our house. And being a board member kind of goes back to the question about the boards. They're asking. It's not like, so over there, one question. It's not nearly as bad as it should be. Right? I mean, I should feel way worse as a board member of a company. The stock is down that way. And what happens is, because most board members have diversification. And so the thing is, when you're the CEO of a company, you don't go home at 5 o'clock. You really never stop working, and your mind never leaves the company. And as an investor, I kind of like that. I mean, I want the person to find some balance in their life, to have longevity. I want them caring about that every day. When you're a board member and you have a terrible board meeting, you can kind of go, "Ooh, that was rough," but oh, another board tomorrow. A lot of traditional board members, they're like, yeah, I'm not going to dwell on that. And now, if you're only doing software investments right now, you might every meeting's a little tough. But so I think the answer is we're not creating the right checks and balances there so that the pain is evenly felt. I think in management, I mean, yeah, we re-up some shares and stuff, but pretty much they, career-wise, I think, take the same brunt of the investor. Board members don't. And I wish I could tell you, I'd love to tell you, because my values would make me feel better if I could say, I can't sleep at night because of what's happened to public market investors at UiPath. And I was actually with one at a Morgan Stanley event about a month ago. And he was because he's an investor, slightly more aggressively making your point.
I didn't like the idea.
Yeah, and Wellington did. And so I was appropriately getting, and we were playing golf, and he's a really good golfer, and I suck, so it was a double whammy. And he's like, you can't even chip, much less make me money. And it was absolutely fair. And I actually thought about it. I thought afterwards, I was like, that's exactly what he should be saying. He should be saying, you're not helping us a good steward. And what are you going to do about it? And it made me kind of get a wake-up call. And I actually shared that information with our board in the executive session at the next meeting. And I told the story, and I said, guys, we're becoming complacent. And I'm saying, well, everybody's having a hard time. Everyone's having a tough situation, which is true. But
Palantir's triple.
Yeah. Oh, and actually, Palantir's a trickier example because what they do. But look at ServiceNow. Look at Salesforce. Again, not quite as dramatic as ServiceNow, which is gaining on me. Look at Workday. So some companies have figured it out. It's more the people who are positioned with the system of record, as I talked about earlier. But, well, then why didn't we do that? Why didn't we think about our stickiness that way? So I do think we need to be more aggressive with board members, for sure. And I think one of the things that I hope we'll see more of is when we think about recommendations, I'd like to see ISS, those guys get more aggressive about not saying, well, you're on the comp committee and you gave too much equity to the joker that's doing a bad job as CEO, so we're going to vote against you. I'd like to just say, like, company stock performance has been terrible. I'm going to vote against all of you. And not necessarily that we have to, you might not want to necessarily replace them, but you sure should be getting the message. And I'll tell you a little secret. I won't tell you which board. It'll be inside baseball. But we're having this discussion about someone who's on the comp committee who took the brunt of it in our last election vote. And he was sort of making a joke about the fact that because our stock-based compensation is too high. Well, I'm on the comp committee. I'm the head of the comp committee, so I got the ISS, negative vote and got just under 50% approval. We got a staggered board, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have it. You don't stay on the board because there's no one else to take that spot. But it wasn't like people felt crappy about it. It was almost like, the system is such a way that we're getting this negative feedback. It sort of hurts my feelings a little bit, and it's not fair. And the answer should be, what the hell? For all. So I would like to see us as an industry do a better job in public companies of, like, I don't know what it is, shame. I like shame. That's what I'm going to like to generally do. Shame is good, but other things, one of the things I brought up and was not successful, because there's some people who their job is being on boards, like that's their livelihood and what they've got to their career to a point. And so I'm on 4 boards, and as a public company board, if you count the stock and the cash, it's usually somewhere you get like $300,000 or $400,000 a year. But if you're on 3 or 4 of them, you can have a reason. It's not very liquid. But over time, this cycle out. And so some people, that's their job, and their family depends on that livelihood. For me, I don't care about it. I'm not doing it for the money. I've been so lucky that I don't care about it. I do it because I want to try to help companies be successful. So I said, we should not get paid this year. And that was a chilly reception. Let me tell you.
I believe it.
Yeah. Everyone was like, well, how would we attract great candidates? It's the same message, How would we attract great candidates to our board in the future? Well, are we recruiting new members right now? So who are we worried about? And the answer is, no, that's irresponsible, and you're missing the point, you're missing the big picture. But I was kind of, I don't know. I think it'd be powerful for a board to say, we didn't deliver to shareholders. We're not going to take any pay. And then it'd be great if people would start pressuring boards to say, hey, get out there and stand behind your investors.
So I hear a pay-for-performance SaaS app coming.
I mean, there's got to be one. There's got to be one there. And again, the
Can
only
we get
thing
board notes then too? Because that's what we really want.
Yeah.
baseball.
Can see the
That's
notes,
what we
yeah,
want.
yeah.
Can I get them?
Well, what I'd really like to do is every board should have to vote on their comp, and then who voted for or against, that should be public.
There you go.
That would be a good one, because then all of a sudden everyone would look like Springer. They'd all go, oh yeah, I don't feel good about it. But if no one knows, then it's easy to say that would be irresponsible to do that. Yeah. I don't think it's big enough app. It's not quite enough, but I like the idea.
But been through it with boards. I'll tell you all about it.
Board Vantage should offer that as a option.
LPC is what it would be called. It's the LP. It's not the board. You gave your money to.
Right, exactly.
The LP should have visibility.
I'm sensitive to time. I know I don't keep you on schedule, but we have one more.
One more question. Do we have one more question?
I love it. The pressure is really on. Last time, so it's like I gotta ask a non-dumb question. Okay, she's great. There we go.
As a run, well, I think thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking your time being here. And what are some of the things that you are working on that you think this group may be able to, help you or support you?
Well, number one, I'm unemployed and I'm looking for a job. So, I suppose if you want to help me personally, I would say that if I took a slightly broader interpretation about things that matter to me, I'll give you a couple. So, anyone familiar with Pledge 1%? So, I'm a member of Pledge 1%. I'm a big advocate. We have a global board for 1%, and that just basically means we write a check. That is what it means. And I show up at events and try to get people to take the pledge. And we ask companies, and I think I recommend all of you, as you think about this, you don't need to do it your first week as a company, but once you start to get to some success in your business and you can see the path, that equity you're creating is valuable, we ask you to give 1% of your equity for philanthropic purposes. We don't give it to us. You spend the money, you put it where you want to put it. And I'd highly encourage you to put it behind things that matter to your employees. So like at DocuSign, we created a fund called DocuSign Forests, and hardly genius, but if you use electronic signature, you don't use paper. If you don't use paper, you don't have to cut down trees. Trees are in the forest. So guess who figured that out in his first month on the job? This guy right here. And they made a partnership with Jane Goodall, and I did Davos with Jane Goodall. And Jane was actually here this week speaking at Dreamforce. She stayed with me in San Francisco. She's close with my mom, and it was great. And so we built a purpose. So each company should find their DocuSign for forests and consider doing it. So if anyone's interested in that, I host events all the time at my house in Appleton to support companies that want to, we call it Take the Pledge 1%. And that would be of all the things that would probably be most exciting to me when seeing people say, yeah, I want to give back to the community that way. And I will tell you as a final statement, one, I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, even if your company's struggling a little bit, God, we're in the land of milk and honey and the tech. I mean, I think about myself and I go, I work pretty hard. I'm a reasonably smart guy. I try to check my ego. If I'd gone anywhere but Silicon Valley, I would not have had the career success that I've had. And those of you that think it's all you and it's not the ecosystem, you're wrong. But you feel free to think you're the special one and you made it happen. Like all the people at Google. I love the people at Google that said, I was employee number 1,307 and I built Google. No, you didn't. But you can believe that if you want. And so I think it's actually it's the right thing to do. But the second thing is it's actually great for your company. It really, and 1% it's meaningful, but it can become, if you do it well, the opportunity to really make people feel excited, particularly your young employees. They don't want to work in a company that they don't think has some purpose and mission bigger than just making money. Not that there's anything wrong with making money. Make sure they think that making money is important for the business. But I think it's a huge enabler. So that's Pledge 1% would be the thing that would get you most excited if anyone wants to get involved. Call me anytime.
Amazing. Let me give a round of applause to Dan Springer.